had a gybe on in some pretty hard conditions, I guess 35 knots, 40, and had a bad one, you know, like thought we had a good wave to go down, and as we're going down and we sent the keel through, basically both slowed up, stopped, and I should have pulled out of doing it, and you know, we probably would have broached and something like that, but it wouldn't have been the outcome that we had, which was, you know, the main slamming over on the runners, breaking the battens, which was bad, but the worst part is we've pulled the track off the back of the mast. So guys did an awesome job to get the main down. We were actually scratching our head for a little while, trying to work out how to get the main down, and you know, and then the squalls to 50 knots while we're doing it. So 50 knots is a hard ask in the best of times of the boat in perfect condition, and we were far from it. So did an awesome job, everyone, to do that. So now we've got it down, so now we're just kind of discussing how and when we can fix it. We're trying to keep the boat moving as fast as possible now, but you know, we only just got a jib up, still probably doing 16 knots in 45 knots of wind. So the plan is hopefully get the track glued back on or screwed back on. Then we've got to repair some battens, some mainsail over the next day or two. And if that all goes to plan, we can be up, you know, basically sailing again at 100%, but it's going to take time, and we've got to be careful.
It's full home now, and it's yeah, it just came down and it's quite wet on deck, and it's no, it's good.
When it gets hard, wet and tired, it's hard, wet and tired for all your mates on the other boats as well. You've got to keep working hard. It's hard for everyone. Sail fast. Going to Australia. Heading home. Well, how we going? So far, so good.
Where I spent an awful lot of time, so I'm very happy. But we knew this depression was coming, and we've been talking about it in Cape Town during the preparation period. And we made a decision of what wind speed and sea state we were happy in to still be sailing our boat rather than just in survival mode. And it's important that we want to keep sailing so that we can come out the other side and carry on racing. And that's why we've elected to go north and pick the wind speed and the sea state that suits us.
I mean, why do we rave about coming down here? I don't understand. You know, we all think we're tough or something. I don't get it. What is all? You know, Southern Ocean, Southern Ocean. I'm over the Southern Ocean. Southern Ocean.
I think the biggest thing about it is you're suddenly in the middle of nowhere. The closest people to you are the rescue. That's, if anything happens, in terms of safety, it's the boats around you. You're still trying to push the boat as hard as you can, but with that element of not wanting to break. And then your living conditions are pretty extreme. You know, the boat is always full of water. If you've got any time, you're trying to bail the water out, and the water's really cold, so even doing that down below, you're getting really cold. It's hard to keep warm, so it kind of all kind of works against you, and you probably can't eat enough to help your body through. So it's a really tough leg, never mind making the right decisions and trying to push your boat performance.
Beautiful Southern Ocean.
Libby Green, the former navigator from Team SEA in the last edition. We'll be hearing more from her in just a moment about what's happened strategically out on the race course. But right now I'm joined by Phil Lawrence, the race director of the Volvo Ocean Race. And Phil, it's been a rather intense last 24 hours, let's say that. There's so much that I want to ask you. But first of all, we've been hearing some questions about the ice skates. What are they? How is it that you guys use them? And you know, how do the sailors need to sort of act around them?
Well, modern satellite technology means that we can locate the icebergs in the Southern Ocean, and just as importantly, we can track their movements. An iceberg can drift at up to 2 knots, so that's 100 miles in 48 hours. Clearly, we don't want the boats travelling at very high speeds getting anywhere near these icebergs, so we set an exclusions limit around the whole of Antarctica, and the boats are not allowed to sail below that line.
Okay, so why is it that we're seeing the fleet so close? Because, you know, in the last few hours, we've had the majority of the fleet, at least, really compact down right to the limit.
It's pretty simple. The further south you can go, the shorter the distance to the finish. So the guys are balancing the risk-reward of getting as far south as possible against the impact of the weather.
Okay, now there's one incident that's come apparent in the last little hours. We've been watching Team AkxoNobel struggling a little bit on the tracker, which we'll show you in just a moment. The speed loss a little bit. What do we know so far about that?
Well, they've reported to us that they've damaged their mainsail and the track that attaches itself to the mast. This means at the moment they can't use their mainsail, and therefore the performance of the boat is compromised. But importantly, they've reported that the crew are all safe and well, and the situation on the boat is stable.
And you were saying just a few moments ago before we came on air that the big thing is going ahead, no main, it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it will be uncomfortable, particularly as they drop off the back of the fleet, because the sea state will worsen. So they'll be going slower through the waves, and the waves will be getting bigger, maybe 6 or 7 metres.
Okay, right, Phil, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're a busy man. I know you're monitoring everything that's going on the racetrack, so I will let you get on. We have got a lot to bring you today, not least a very incredible live X call with Vestas 11th Hour Racing. Take a look at this.
Last night was pretty full on. It was real dark, and you know, that's typical low cloud cover that you expect down here with tons of wind. We had a 50-knot gust. So it's been everything I think we expected it to be.
Unbelievable scenes on the water at the moment, but let's go and take a look at the live position reports right now for the fleet, currently hurtling their way to the finish line in Melbourne in leg 3 of the Volvo Ocean Race. We know that the breeze has been absolutely hounding them. We know they've had an incredibly tough time. So let's check in and see how they're holding up. Well, since the last time we saw them, if you were with us in a quick fix, we've actually had almost a reverse of the situation with turn the tide on plastic, making themselves a little bit more towards the middle. Hung KaiScallywag now taking that windward position. They're the one right up to the north at the moment. Team Brunel is the next boat down in that pack, but just look at some of the boat speeds that we're seeing at the moment out on the course. Lower than Team Brunel, further south, we've got Vestas 11th Hour Racing. We have got Mapfre and Dongfeng, no surprise there, vying for the lead. And then, as Phil Lawrence just alluded to just a moment ago, Team AkxoNobel struggling a little bit, having to get themselves back onto the right foot after dealing with that main track. So a little bit of a challenge for them. Well, how do we get into these positions? Well, this is what the past 12 hours of racing has looked like. As I was saying, turn the tide on plastic, they were the further north by a huge 230 miles. They picked a little moment to jibe back and start sailing back towards that southerly group. And right then, it was Hung KaiScallywag that said, actually, we quite like where you are. David Witt and his crew sailing up to the top. At the bottom of the pack, the southerly group with Dongfeng Race Team leading the charge, they are starting to get very close to that ice exclusion zone with those last few jibes. And certainly over the next few days, as they ride the coattails of what's left of the pressure as we look into the future, the last of the breeze is going to rocket them very close to the ice system and then on to the finish line in Melbourne, where we will get to our eventual winner and a very tired cruise indeed. Well, as I showed you just a moment ago, we were lucky enough to connect, a fantastic connection. Thanks very much to Inmarsat for lining that up with Vestas 11th Hour Racing, and we spoke to Mark Tao.
The conditions are pretty full on. I'm actually sitting down below talking to you guys. It's a bit too wet on deck to do this interview. But yeah, we've had 30 to 40 knots for the last day and a half. We're rocketing downwind, as I'm sure you can see behind me. And it's quite cold out. Everybody's got the wool socks and the balaclavas and the warm gloves, and I think the sea and air temp are below 10 degrees at this point. So it's full-on Southern Ocean conditions, but good fun. We're making good speed and pushing hard.
You say good fun. We're actually seeing some of your crew on the deck at the moment, dancing away, enjoying the conditions as they were. I mean, I'm guessing this didn't catch you unawares. You know, you had time to prepare?
I mean, we knew exactly what we were coming down here to find, and we've definitely found it. It's been, last night was pretty full on. It was real dark, and, you know, that typical low cloud cover that you expect down here with tons of wind. We had a 50-knot gust. So it's been everything I think we expected it to be. You know, we're pushing hard. We've got some miles to make up, but the sea state's really confused and pretty lumpy. So the boat launches off some pretty big waves every now and then, and we're you know, trying to always monitor how hard to push and when to throttle it back. So definitely living on the edge right now. We had 3 reefs earlier when it was a bit windier, and kind of just been going in and out with the reefs to monitor the power. We jibed a few hours earlier and put a 3rd reef in. It's a lot easier to just more control. So yeah, we've been pretty proactive with that and just trying to keep it going. We got off to a slow start. The middle option definitely helped us catch up. You know, it was a bit disappointing. I think we were hoping that it would have paid a little bit more. When the front ran us over, it looked like Dongfeng and Mapfre in particular had a little bit more time before it ran them over, so they were able to make a little bit of a jump before we could get over the top of them. But look, there's plenty of miles to go, and I think ultimately it's just going to come down to who can sail the best in these conditions. It looks like the forecast is looking like we've got quite a bit of heavy air running ahead of us and a lot of jibing. So it's going to be really hard in the crew and hard in the boat. And ultimately, whoever comes out ahead is going to be who can manage all that the best.
How long do you think you guys are going to have to stay on the edge like this?
I was just sitting in the nav station with Nick looking at the weather. It doesn't look like the breeze goes below 25 knots for another 4 or 5 days. So I'd say we'll be on the edge for a while.
All right, Mark, well, lastly, I mean, how's the crew sort of holding up? I mean, it's got to be scary, but I'm guessing there's some element to it that's pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you guys saw the dancing earlier. We're trying to enjoy it. I can't say it's as pleasant and comfortable as where you guys are probably sitting, but whatever, you know, everybody's here because they want to be, so spirits are still high.
Mark Towell on board Vestas 11th Hour Racing, currently seeing upwards 40 to 45 knots across the deck. And as Mark was saying, it's very hard on boat and crew. And that was certainly the case when we caught up with Antonio Fontes on Hung KaiScallywag.
Yesterday when we were stacking the sails, I fall in the cockpit and somehow I must put the arm on a badly position. I'm not completely sure if it's broken or not, but it's really painful right now. I cannot move it at all. I'm moving between the nav station and the bunk. I cannot help the guys outside. I don't know what's more painful, not helping the guys outside or the pain itself on the arm. But anyway, not the best situation here.
What's the conditions like for you?
Yeah, obviously at these speeds, at these waves, you walk with your 4 feet, your 2 hands, 2 feet to move everywhere, and with one less, it's very hard. It's very tricky. I don't know yet. I haven't made a lot of movements yet, but the small ones that I did was very hard to reach even the half of the boat. Just getting from the bank to the nav station is very hard.
And give us a sense of how hard the weather has hit you guys out there in the moment, because, I mean, from the numbers that we've seen here in race control, I mean, it's full on.
So we were fast and safe, and now we are seeing less. We are 23 knots, 24. Actually, we are jibing right now, so yeah.
Well, you were in the south group. Now you're punching out to the north. Talk us through what you're hoping to find out there.
Mainly to get a bit out of 40 knots wind, because it's not faster with 40 knots. Hope for a bit of shelter here, but I don't know if exactly we are getting that exactly, but at least we try.
How is the rest of the crew? How's the boat holding up at the moment?
It's good, pretty good. The whole team is tight, and the boat have no injuries. So yeah, it's everything working perfectly apart from my arm.
Oh, a hard life for Antonio Fontes on board, struggling with a little bit of a bruised arm and diligently sticking by the nav station. Well, that's the hardship for the sailors and for the boats, but what about the strategy and what about what we're seeing right now in the race to Melbourne? Well, the person who knows exactly what moves should be played out on the race course is Libby Green. How she was the navigator on board Team SEA in the last edition, and we asked her to give us her take on the race at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, overnight, we were talking about this big storm that was coming and the breeze building, and I think overnight we've seen some pretty strong winds for a lot of the boats. I think what's really interesting is actually those further south seem to end up with a much more consistent but slightly lower wind strength, which has really played to them. They've generally had between 25 to 30 knots, and then a lot of the boats further north or just that bit further back even have really seemed to struggle and have much more squally conditions, which I suspect has made it much harder to manage their sails and their boat speed. So you've seen almost that sort of Dongfeng and Mapfre have held on to quite a nice little lead.
Now, I want to talk to you about Turn the Tide on Plastic and Hung KaiScallywag, but before I do, you know, you were saying yesterday, Vestas 11th Hour Racing, they were in the position that you would choose, and it looks to me like, you know, they've come good. They're in around about 3rd place and in the hunt.
Yeah, I think not long after I spoke to you, you saw Vestas put the bows down, and they were going sort of between 4 to 6 knots faster than the boats to leeward and to windward, and you know, actually ended up right back in the fleet. And now you've seen that lead bunch, Vestas, Mapfre, and Dongfeng, being quite aggressive about how they're jibing along that ice skate, and you know, those 3 boats have really nailed the shifts and the angles, and it's probably pretty full on in those max wind strengths to be doing those kind of jibes and stacking.
All right, well, Libby Greenhouse giving us her take on what's going to pay as we push ever closer on leg 3 to Melbourne. It's certainly been an unbelievable ride so far, and as we heard from some of the sailors there, we know that this breeze is going to hold up, well, at least to some degree for some of the fleet over the next 3 or 4 days. If the sailors start to drop their guard, that is when we could start to see mistakes happen out on the racecourse. You are going to want to stay glued to the race on Facebook, on Twitter, and on the Volvo Ocean Race app if you haven't downloaded it already. We're going to be back tomorrow with a quick fix in the morning, and then at 1300 UTC, we'll have another Daily Life.